What happens when the ultimatum I thought was just a test ends with a manila envelope and my name in bold print? How did a single night at my best friend's house turn my marriage into a list of evidence and a judge's order? Can you really call it love if one laugh destroys everything? The living room felt smaller than usual as I stood there, hands on my hips, watching Caleb grade papers at the kitchen table. His red pen moved methodically across each assignment, the same way he did everything. Careful, measured, predictable. God, it drove me crazy. "I'm staying at Jasper's tonight after the party," I announced, not really asking. Caleb's pen stopped mid-sentence. He looked up at me with those tired brown eyes that used to make me melt, but now just made me feel guilty. "Ivadne, you know how I feel about that." "How you feel about what, exactly?" I crossed my arms, already building my defense. "About me having friends, about me having fun for once?" He set down his pen and rubbed his temples. At 35, Caleb was already getting grey at his temples, probably from dealing with hormonal teenagers all day. Sometimes I wondered if he saw me as just another one of his students to manage. "It's not about having fun, it's about—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, like he always did. "It's about boundaries. Jasper doesn't respect our marriage." I laughed, but it came out harsher than I intended. "Jasper is your college friend, Caleb. He's been nothing but supportive of us." "Supportive?" Caleb stood up and I could see the tension in his shoulders. "He calls you babe in front of me. He puts his hands on you when he talks. He makes jokes about how you're too good for me." "They're just jokes." I threw my hands up. "God, when did you become so uptight? We used to laugh together. We used to have fun." Caleb was quiet for a long moment, staring at the stack of papers on the table. When he looked back at me, something had changed in his expression, something colder. "If you go tonight, Ivadne, that's your choice. But I want you to understand what you're choosing." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine, but I pushed the feeling away. This was exactly what I was talking about. He was trying to control me with guilt and manipulation. "Fine," I said, grabbing my purse from the counter. "I choose to trust that my husband trusts me. Apparently, that's too much to ask." I was halfway to the door when my phone buzzed. A text from Jasper. "Party starts at 8. Can't wait to see you, beautiful." I glanced back at Caleb, but he had already returned to his papers, red pen moving again, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just thrown down a gauntlet in our marriage. My mother picked up on the second ring. "Mum, I need to vent," I said, settling into my car in the driveway. "What's wrong, honey?" "Caleb is being impossible again. I want to stay at Jasper's after his party tonight, and he's acting like I'm asking to run away with another man." Roxana Field had never been Caleb's biggest fan. She thought I'd settled when I married a high school teacher instead of someone more ambitious. "Sweetie, you're married, not buried," she said, her voice warm with sympathy. "You're 33 years old. You shouldn't have to ask permission to spend time with friends." That's exactly what I told him, but he's making it into this whole thing about boundaries and respect. It's exhausting. "Men get insecure when they feel like they're losing control," Mom said. "But you can't let him isolate you from your social life. That's how these controlling relationships start." Controlling. The word hit me like validation. That's exactly what this was. "You're right. I'm going to the party and I'm staying over. If he can't handle that, maybe he needs to figure out why he doesn't trust his own wife." After I hung up, I sat in the car for a few more minutes, watching Caleb through the kitchen window. He looked so focused on his work, so completely unbothered by our fight. It made me even angrier. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lynn, Caleb's sister. "Hey, Ivadne, heard you and Caleb had words. You okay?" I stared at the text, knowing that Caleb must have called her. The Hartley family was like that, tight-knit to the point of being suffocating. Any issue in our marriage became family business within hours. Instead of responding to Lynn, I started the car and backed out of the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I saw Caleb look up from his papers and watch me leave. Jasper's apartment was already buzzing with people when I arrived. He met me at the door with a huge grin and a beer already opened for me. "There's my favorite married woman," he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. "Don't let Caleb hear you say that," I joked, but there was an edge to it. "Where is the old ball and chain anyway?" Jasper looked over my shoulder like he expected to see Caleb lurking in the hallway. "Home, grading papers, being boring." Jasper's eyes lit up with mischief. "Well, then we'll just have to have enough fun for both of you." The party was exactly what I needed. Loud music, good drinks, and people who knew how to laugh. I felt the tension from my fight with Caleb melting away with each sip of my beer. "You look stressed," said Rebecca, one of Jasper's co-workers. "Everything okay at home?" "Just the usual married couple stuff," I said, trying to sound casual. "Caleb thinks I should ask permission before I breathe." "Ugh, I hate that." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "My ex was like that. Started with little things. Then suddenly I couldn't go anywhere without the third degree." The comparison made me feel vindicated. This wasn't about me being unreasonable. This was about Caleb being controlling. Around 10 o'clock, I was surprised to see Caleb walk through the door. He looked uncomfortable in his button-down shirt and khakis, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Caleb," Jasper called out, raising his beer, "didn't think you'd show." "Just wanted to check in," Caleb said quietly, his eyes finding mine across the room. I felt a mix of guilt and irritation. Part of me was touched that he'd come, but another part was annoyed that he couldn't just trust me to handle one night on my own. "Come on, man, have a drink," Jasper said, throwing an arm around Caleb's shoulders. "Your wife's been telling us how hard you work. You deserve to cut loose." I watched Caleb's jaw tighten at the casual contact, but he didn't say anything. The night continued with Caleb nursing a single beer in the corner while I made a point of being social and carefree. I laughed louder at Jasper's jokes, danced when the music got good, and generally tried to prove that I could have fun without my husband's approval. It was around midnight when things got weird. Jasper had been drinking steadily all night, and his usual flirtiness had ramped up into something more aggressive. When I laughed at one of his stories, he playfully slapped my ass and said, "See, this is what I'm talking about. Ivadne knows how to have a good time." The room went quiet for a second. I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but I forced myself to laugh it off. "Jasper, you're terrible," I said, trying to keep things light. But when I looked across the room, Caleb was staring at us with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt. Something colder, something calculating. He set down his beer, walked over to me and said quietly, "I'm heading home. You staying?" It was a test. I knew it was a test. And I knew that the right answer, the answer that would save my marriage, was to leave with him. But I was tired of tests. I was tired of walking on eggshells around his insecurities. "Yeah, I'm staying," I said, meeting his eyes. Jasper said I could crash on his couch. Caleb nodded once, like he'd expected that answer. "Okay," he said. "I'll see you tomorrow." He left without another word, and I spent the rest of the night telling myself I'd made the right choice. I woke up on Jasper's couch with a pounding headache and the immediate realization that I'd made a terrible mistake. The apartment was trashed from the party, and Jasper was nowhere to be seen. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Caleb and a text from Lynn. "Call me when you get this." Instead of dealing with any of that, I took a shower and tried to piece together the end of the night. I remembered Caleb leaving. I remembered more drinks. I remembered Jasper being handsy and me not stopping him because I was angry and drunk and tired of being the responsible one. What I didn't remember was someone taking pictures. I found out about the photos when I got to work Monday morning. My supervisor, Janet, called me into her office before I'd even had my coffee. "Ivadne, we need to talk about your social media presence," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. My stomach dropped. "What about it?" Janet turned her computer screen toward me, and there I was, laughing while Jasper's hand rested on my lower back, both of us looking flushed and happy. The caption read, "When your bestie knows how to have a good time, married life, nor still got it." I didn't remember posting it, but there it was on my Instagram, tagged with Jasper's account and visible to all my coworkers, friends, and family. "A client saw this and asked if you were representing our company appropriately," Janet continued. "I'm not saying you can't have fun, but maybe think twice before posting pictures that could be misinterpreted." I nodded and mumbled an apology, but inside I was panicking. How drunk had I been? What else had I posted? The rest of the day was a blur of sideways glances and whispered conversations. I caught my coworkers looking at their phones, and then at me, and I knew they were all talking about the photo. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. By lunch, I had 17 comments on the post. Most were innocent enough, friends saying I looked like I was having fun, but a few made my skin crawl. "Lucky guy" from some random dude. "Hubby doesn't mind sharing" from my cousin Jake. "This is why I love married women" from someone I didn't even recognize. I deleted the post immediately, but the damage was done. Screenshots lived forever, and I had a sinking feeling that this was going to follow me home. I was right. Caleb was waiting in the kitchen when I got home, sitting at the same spot where he'd been grading papers 2 nights ago. But this time, there were no papers on the table, just his laptop, open to what looked like a Facebook page. "We need to talk," he said without looking up. "Caleb, about the photo." "Photos," he corrected. "There are several." He turned the laptop toward me, and my heart sank. Someone had tagged me in a whole album from the party. There I was, drink in hand, laughing at Jasper's jokes. There was the ass slap moment, captured in perfect clarity. There was a shot of me and Jasper with our heads close together, whispering something I couldn't remember. But the worst one was a video. 30 seconds of me dancing with Jasper, his hands on my hips, both of us swaying to music that was too loud and too suggestive for a married woman to be dancing to with another man. "Ivadne," Caleb said quietly, "what were you thinking?" I wanted to explain, to tell him that it wasn't what it looked like, that I'd been drunk and angry and stupid. But looking at the evidence laid out on his laptop screen, I realized how pathetic any excuse would sound. So instead, I went on the offensive. "I was thinking that I'm allowed to have fun without my husband monitoring my every move," I said, crossing my arms. "Those photos make it look worse than it was." "Do they?" Caleb clicked to the video again. "Because it looks like my wife grinding on another man while I was at home, respecting her choice to stay out." "It wasn't grinding. We were just dancing." "With his hands on your ass." "It was dancing, Caleb. People dance at parties. It's not a crime." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him processing my response. This was the moment where he usually backed down, where his conflict-avoidant nature would kick in, and we'd sweep this under the rug like we did with all our other problems. But something was different this time. "You're right," he said, closing the laptop. "It's not a crime, and you're not a criminal. You're just not my wife anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. What's that supposed to mean? It means that the woman I married would never humiliate me publicly like this. The woman I married would care about how her actions affected our relationship. The woman I married would be home right now, apologizing and figuring out how to fix this. I am trying to fix this, but you're being dramatic about a few stupid pictures. Caleb stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighbor's yard where kids were playing on a swing set. "My sister called me this morning," he said. "She saw the photos. So did my parents. So did half the people at my school, because apparently one of my students follows you on Instagram." My face burned with shame. I hadn't thought about his job, about how this might affect his reputation as a teacher. "Caleb, I'm sorry, I didn't think—" "No, you didn't think, and that's the problem." He turned back to face me. "This isn't about one night, Ivadne. This is about a pattern. This is about you consistently choosing to prioritize your own desires over our marriage. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you asked me how I felt about something before you did it? When was the last time you considered how your actions might affect me? I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because he was right, and we both knew it. I need some space to think, Caleb said, picking up his laptop. I'm going to stay at Lynn's for a few days. You're leaving me. I'm giving us both time to figure out what we want, because right now, it seems like we want very different things. He was almost to the door when I called out, "What am I supposed to tell people?" Caleb paused with his hand on the doorknob. "Tell them the truth, Ivadne. Tell them you chose Jasper over your marriage, and now you're dealing with the consequences." After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, staring at the closed laptop and trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. "Saw the drama on Facebook. You okay, beautiful?" I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. The house felt different with Caleb gone, bigger and smaller at the same time, if that made sense. I kept expecting to hear his keys in the door or the sound of him making coffee in the morning, but there was just silence. By Wednesday, I was going crazy. I called Lynn, hoping she could give me some insight into what Caleb was thinking. "He's hurt, Ivadne," she said, and I could hear the judgment in her voice. "What did you expect?" I expected him to talk to me instead of running away to his sister's house like a child. "He tried to talk to you. You told him he was being dramatic." I hated how she threw my own words back at me. The Hartley family had this way of remembering every conversation with perfect clarity, like they were all keeping scorecards. "Look, I made a mistake. I know that. But marriage is about forgiveness, right? It's about working through problems together." Lynn was quiet for a moment. "Ivadne, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you love my brother?" The question caught me off guard. Of course I love him. How can you even ask that? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you love the idea of being married more than you love Caleb. It looks like you want all the benefits of having a husband without any of the responsibilities of being a wife. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you did something just because it would make Caleb happy? When was the last time you chose his feelings over your own convenience? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. "He's been documenting things, you know," Lynn continued. "Screenshots, dates, conversations. He's building a case." "A case for what?" "I think you know." The line went dead, and I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like the ground was shifting underneath me. Caleb was documenting our problems. What did that mean? And why did Lynn make it sound so ominous? I decided to go to his school and talk to him face to face. Maybe if I could just explain everything properly, without the pressure of family and social media and all the outside noise, we could work this out. But when I got to Jefferson High, the secretary told me that Mr. Hartley was in meetings all afternoon and couldn't be disturbed. "Can you tell him his wife stopped by?" I asked. The woman's expression shifted slightly, and I realized she probably knew about the photos too. In a town this size, gossip traveled fast. "I'll let him know," she said, but her tone suggested she wouldn't be doing me any favors. I was walking back to my car when I heard someone call my name. "Ivadne, wait up!" I turned to see Marcus Chen, one of the other teachers at the school. He and Caleb had been work friends for years, often grabbing drinks after faculty meetings. "Hey, Marcus," I said, trying to sound casual. "I heard about you and Caleb having some problems. It's just a misunderstanding. We'll work it out." Marcus looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Look, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Caleb asked me to be a character witness." "A character witness for what?" "I don't know all the details, but he's been talking to a lawyer. He wanted me to write a statement about his character, his work ethic, that kind of thing." The world seemed to tilt sideways. A lawyer. Caleb was talking to a lawyer. "When?" I managed to ask. "He called me yesterday. Said he might need references for some legal proceedings. I thanked Marcus and somehow made it back to my car before the panic really set in. Legal proceedings, documentation, character witnesses. Caleb wasn't just taking a break from our marriage, he was ending it. I called my mother as soon as I got home. "Honey, slow down," she said when I finished explaining the situation. "You're getting worked up over nothing, so he talked to a lawyer. That doesn't mean anything. Lots of people talk to lawyers when they're upset. But Lynn said he was building a case, and he's been documenting things." "Documenting what? A few party photos?" "Please, no judge is going to end a marriage over some pictures of you having fun." Her confidence was reassuring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was underestimating Caleb. He wasn't the type to make threats he couldn't back up. "What should I do?" "You should live your life, sweetie. Don't let him manipulate you with threats and lawyer talk. If he wants to throw away your marriage over his own insecurities, that's his loss." After we hung up, I felt a little better. Mum was right. Caleb was probably just trying to scare me into changing my behavior. It was a power play, and I wasn't going to fall for it. To prove to myself that I wasn't intimidated, I called Jasper. "Hey, beautiful," he answered on the first ring. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better. Caleb's being impossible." "Want to talk about it? I'm making dinner if you want to come over." I hesitated. Going to Jasper's house right now was probably the worst possible idea. But the alternative was sitting alone in my empty house, wondering what Caleb was planning. "Just as friends," Jasper added like he could read my thoughts. "I know you're going through a tough time." "Okay, I'll be there in an hour." Jasper's apartment was clean for once, and he'd actually cooked a real meal instead of ordering takeout. We ate pasta and drank wine and talked about everything except my marriage. It felt good to be around someone who didn't judge me, who didn't make me feel like I had to defend every decision I'd ever made. "You seem tense," Jasper said as we moved to the couch after dinner. "Wouldn't you be? My husband is threatening to divorce me over some stupid photos." "His loss," Jasper said, moving closer to me on the couch. "Any man who can't appreciate what he has doesn't deserve to keep it." I should have moved away. I should have created distance. I should have gone home. Instead, I let him put his arm around me. I let him tell me how beautiful I was, how I deserved better, how Caleb was a fool for not fighting harder to keep me. When he kissed me, I kissed him back. It was soft at first, almost tentative, but then his hands were in my hair and mine were on his chest, and suddenly we were making out like teenagers on his couch. I pulled away first, breathing hard. "I can't do this." "Why not?" Jasper's eyes were dark with want. "You're separated. You're allowed to move on." "We're not separated. We're just taking a break." "Ivadne, he's talking to lawyers. He's already moved on. Why shouldn't you?" Part of me knew he was right. If Caleb was serious about divorce, then what did it matter what I did now? The marriage was already over. But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, knew that crossing this line would make everything irreversible. "I should go," I said, standing up and grabbing my purse. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Jasper walked me to the door, and I could feel his disappointment radiating off him in waves. "Call me if you change your mind," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I'll be here." I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling from his kiss. I'd almost cheated on my husband. I'd come so close to crossing a line that there would be no coming back from. But I hadn't. That had to count for something, right? I was pulling into my driveway when I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Caleb's Honda Civic, with him sitting in the driver's seat. Our eyes met through the windshields, and I knew, somehow I knew, that he'd been waiting for me, that he'd seen me come home from Jasper's house at 10 o'clock at night. He started his engine and drove away without a word, leaving me sitting in my driveway with the taste of another man's kiss on my lips and the growing certainty that I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. I barely slept that night, replaying the image of Caleb's face when he saw me coming home from Jasper's. There had been no anger in his expression, no hurt, just a cold resignation that scared me more than any shouting match would have. Thursday morning brought a text from Eleanor, Caleb's mother. "Family dinner Sunday at 2. Please come. We need to talk." The formal tone was so unlike Eleanor's usual warmth that I knew this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. I spent the rest of the week in a fog, going through the motions at work while my personal life imploded around me. Janet called me into her office again on Friday. "Ivadne, I'm concerned about your focus lately. You've missed 2 deadlines this week, and the Morrison account specifically requested a different point of contact. I'm sorry, I've been dealing with some personal issues. I understand that, but I need to know that you can separate your personal and professional lives. We can't afford to lose clients because of outside distractions." It was a warning wrapped in corporate speak, but the message was clear: get your act together or find another job. Sunday came too soon. I drove to the Hartley family home with my stomach in knots, rehearsing apologies and explanations that all sounded hollow in my head. Caleb's childhood home was a modest 2-story house with a wraparound porch and a garden that Eleanor tended with religious devotion. It had always felt welcoming before, but today it looked like a fortress. Lynn answered the door with a tight smile. "Ivadne, thanks for coming." The living room felt like a courtroom. Caleb sat in his father's old recliner, looking more composed than I'd seen him in weeks. Eleanor and Richard were on the couch, their faces carefully neutral. Lynn took the remaining chair, leaving me to sit alone on the love seat like I was facing a tribunal. "Where do we start?" Richard asked, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd raised 3 successful children and wasn't impressed by drama. "Maybe with an explanation," Eleanor said gently, but her eyes were harder than usual. "We saw the photos, Ivadne. We heard about the lawyer consultations. We know Caleb's been staying with Lynn. We just want to understand what's happening to our family." I looked around the room, searching for an ally, but found none. Even Eleanor, who had always been kind to me, was clearly on her son's side. "It's not as bad as it looks," I started. "The photos were taken out of context. Jasper and I are just friends." "Friends don't put their hands on married women like that," Richard said bluntly. "It was just dancing." "It was disrespectful," Lynn interrupted. "To Caleb, to your marriage, to this family." I felt my temper rising. "I'm not on trial here. I made some mistakes, but that doesn't give you the right to judge me." "Doesn't it?" Caleb spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but steady. "When your mistakes affect my reputation, my job, my relationships with my family, doesn't that give us the right to have opinions?" "Your reputation?" "God, Caleb, you act like I committed murder. I went to a party and had some drinks. That's not a federal crime." "No, it's not," he agreed. "But it is a pattern, and I'm tired of pretending it's not." "What pattern?" Caleb reached into a folder beside his chair and pulled out a notebook. My heart sank when I realized it was filled with his careful handwriting. "March 15th, he read. "Ivadne goes to dinner with Jasper and his co-workers. Comes home at midnight, claims they lost track of time. Smells like cologne that isn't mine. I hug goodbye." April 2nd. Ivadne posts photo with Jasper at the baseball game. Caption reads, "My favorite date." When I ask about it, she says it's just a joke, and I'm too sensitive. He flipped the page. April 20th. Ivadne stays late at office party. Jasper picks her up instead of calling me. Says her phone died, but Instagram shows her posting stories all night. Each entry hit like a physical blow. I'd forgotten half of these incidents, but seeing them laid out chronologically, I could see how they looked from Caleb's perspective. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been paying attention to my wife, something I should have done sooner." Eleanor leaned forward. "Ivadne, honey, we're not trying to attack you, but can you see how this looks from our side? How it looks from Caleb's side? It looks like you're all ganging up on me instead of trying to understand what I'm going through." What you're going through? Lynn's voice rose. What about what Caleb's going through? Do you know he's been having panic attacks? Do you know he can't sleep? Do you know he asked for a leave of absence because he can't concentrate on teaching? I stared at Caleb, shocked. You didn't tell me any of that. When would I have told you? You've been too busy defending Jasper to ask how I'm doing. The room fell silent. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, marking the seconds of my marriage's death. What do you want from me? I asked finally. We want you to choose, Richard said. Choose your marriage or choose whatever this thing with Jasper is. But stop trying to have both. There is no thing with Jasper. Then why were you at his apartment until 10 o'clock Thursday night? Caleb asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for an explanation that wouldn't sound like what it was. We had dinner as friends. I needed someone to talk to. About what? About you. About this whole mess. About how my husband is threatening to divorce me instead of working on our problems. And what did Jasper suggest? Lynn asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I couldn't tell them about the kiss. I couldn't admit that I'd almost cheated, that I'd wanted to cheat, that part of me was still thinking about it. He suggested that maybe you're all right. Maybe Caleb and I want different things. It was the wrong answer. I knew it as soon as the words left my mouth, but it was too late to take them back. Caleb closed his notebook and stood up. Then we're done here, he said. I'll have my lawyer contact you this week. Caleb, wait. But he was already walking toward the door. Eleanor followed him, whispering something I couldn't hear. Richard shook his head and left the room without looking at me. Only Lynn remained, staring at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. You could have had everything, she said. My brother would have given you everything. All you had to do was love him back. I do love him. No, you don't. You love the idea of him. You love having a husband who pays the bills and doesn't ask questions and lets you do whatever you want. But you don't love Caleb. If you did, you never would have put him through this. She left me alone in the living room, surrounded by family photos that I was no longer part of. I drove home in a daze, my phone buzzing with texts I didn't want to read. When I got to the house, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table where this whole nightmare had started. My phone rang. Jasper's name flashed on the screen. Hey, beautiful. How was the family inquisition? Awful, I said, my voice breaking. They hate me. Caleb's filing for divorce. Everything is falling apart. I'm sorry, babe. You want me to come over? I should have said no. I should have hung up the phone and called a marriage counselor, or a therapist, or anyone who could help me save what was left of my relationship. Instead, I said, yes, please come over. Because if my marriage was already over, what did it matter anymore? Jasper arrived 30 minutes later with a bottle of wine and a sympathetic smile. By then, I'd already finished my first glass and was well on my way to making decisions I'd regret in the morning. You look like hell, he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted longer than it should have. I feel like hell. Want to join me in drowning my sorrows? We sat on the couch, the same couch where Caleb and I used to watch movies and talk about our future, and I told Jasper everything. The family meeting, the notebook, Caleb's lawyer threats, the way everyone looked at me like I was the villain in my own story. They're trying to gaslight you, Jasper said, refilling my wine glass. Making you think you're crazy for wanting a social life. Am I crazy? Maybe I am a terrible wife. Maybe I don't deserve... Stop. Jasper moved closer to me on the couch. You're not terrible. You're human. You're allowed to have friends, to have fun, to be appreciated. His hand found mine, and I didn't pull away. Caleb never appreciated you, he continued. Not the way you deserve. He took you for granted. He says I took him for granted. That's projection. Classic manipulation tactic. Jasper's thumb traced circles on my palm. You know what I think? What? I think you're better off without him. I think you deserve someone who celebrates your spirit instead of trying to crush it. The wine was making everything fuzzy around the edges, but Jasper's words felt like a lifeline. Here was someone who understood me, who didn't make me feel guilty for wanting more out of life. "I think I'm falling in love with you," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Jasper's eyes darkened. "Ivadne, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't stop thinking about Thursday night, about what almost happened. What do you want to happen now?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. What I wanted was to feel desired, appreciated, chosen. What I wanted was to stop being the bad guy in my own life story. What I wanted was to forget that I'd ever been married to a man who documented my failures in a notebook. I leaned forward and kissed him. This time, I didn't pull away. We made out on the couch like teenagers, hands roaming, inhibitions lowered by wine and anger, and the intoxicating feeling of being wanted. When Jasper suggested we move to the bedroom, I didn't protest. "Are you sure?" he asked, his hand on my bedroom door. I thought about Caleb's notebook. I thought about his family's disappointed faces. I thought about the divorce papers that were probably already being drafted. "I'm sure." We never made it to the bed. Jasper pushed me against the bedroom wall, his mouth hot on my neck, his hands everywhere at once. I lost myself in the sensation of being desired, of being chosen, of being with someone who didn't see me as a problem to be solved. It was quick and desperate, and nothing like the careful, considerate sex I'd had with Caleb for 8 years. It was exactly what I needed. Afterward, we lay tangled in my sheets, the sheets I shared with my husband, and I waited to feel guilty. Instead, I felt free. "That was incredible," Jasper murmured against my shoulder. I was already drifting off, exhausted by wine and emotion, and the best orgasm I'd had in months. I woke up alone. Jasper had left sometime during the night, leaving only a note on my nightstand. "Didn't want to make things awkward. Call me later. Jay." The reality of what I'd done hit me like a physical blow. I'd cheated on my husband. In our bed, in our house, with his college friend. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up. When I finally made it to the kitchen, there was a manila envelope on the counter that hadn't been there the night before. My name was written on the front in Caleb's careful handwriting. Inside were divorce papers, a restraining order, and a USB drive labeled Evidence. There was also a note. "I came by to get some clothes and found your car in the driveway next to Jasper's. I didn't come inside, but I didn't need to. The USB contains everything I've documented over the past 6 months, including photos from last night that I took through the bedroom window. My lawyer says this should expedite the proceedings. You'll be hearing from him by Wednesday. Caleb." My hands shook as I plugged the USB into my laptop. The folder contained dozens of screenshots from my social media accounts, photos from parties where I looked too comfortable with other men, text message exchanges with Jasper that I'd forgotten about, and a detailed timeline of every incident that had led to this moment. At the bottom of the folder was a video file labeled Final Evidence. I clicked on it with trembling fingers. It was security footage from our neighbor's camera, time-stamped from the night before. The angle showed our bedroom window clearly, and through the thin curtains, you could see 2 figures moving together in ways that left no doubt about what was happening. Caleb had watched his wife have sex with another man through a window, and he'd recorded it for his divorce attorney. I slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom to throw up again. My phone was buzzing with notifications, text messages, missed calls, Facebook notifications. The first text was from Lynn. "Caleb told us what happened. Don't contact any of us again." The second was from Eleanor. "I'm praying for you, but I can't support what you've done." The third was from my mother. "Honey, call me. Richard Hartley called and said some terrible things about you, and I need to hear your side." But it was the Facebook notification that made my blood run cold. Someone had tagged me in a post, When you think your marriage is private but your neighbors have security cameras, or busted Chiros karma. The video was already spreading. By noon, it had been shared 47 times. By evening, it was on 3 different local gossip pages. By the end of the week, everyone I'd ever known had seen footage of me cheating on my husband. The comments were brutal. What a disgusting person. Poor Caleb, he deserves so much better. This is why I don't trust married women who go out without their husbands. Hope the 5 minutes of fun was worth destroying your family. I tried calling Jasper, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I tried calling Caleb, but his number had been disconnected. I tried going to work, but Janet called me into her office and suggested I take a leave of absence until the situation dies down. I was completely, utterly alone. The divorce papers cited adultery, emotional abandonment, and irreconcilable differences. Caleb was asking for half of everything we'd built together, plus attorney fees, plus damages for emotional distress. His lawyer's letter was clinical in its precision. Mr. Hartley has documented evidence of Mrs. Hartley's extramarital affair, including video footage, text message exchanges, and witness testimony. We expect this matter to be resolved quickly and in our client's favor. I hired my own lawyer, but she took one look at the evidence and suggested I settle. "Honey," she said, "fighting this is going to cost you more than just giving him what he wants. The video alone is enough to destroy any sympathy a judge might have for you." 3 months later, I was divorced, unemployed, and living in a studio apartment across town. Caleb got the house, half my retirement fund, and the respect of everyone we'd ever known. I got exactly what I'd asked for, my freedom. It just wasn't worth what I'd paid for it. The hearing was a formality, but it still felt like an execution. Caleb sat calm beside his lawyer, thinner than before, almost peaceful. The judge asked if I contested the adultery. I didn't. She listed the evidence, video, posts, witnesses, then signed the order. 8 years ended in 30 seconds. In the hallway, Caleb finally said my name. He told me he didn't enjoy any of it, that sorry couldn't change what happened, and that he was going back to teaching and rebuilding. He wished me well, then walked away without looking back. That night, Jasper texted, asking if I was free. I deleted it. Months later, I heard Caleb was dating someone stable. I understood the truth too late. Freedom without love is just loneliness, and I'd traded a real marriage for a man who disappeared the moment consequences showed up.